What would you do if the love of your life vanished into a dark alley right before your eyes? One moment, Mia was in my arms, her laughter echoing under the neon lights of Los Angeles. The next, she was gone, dragged away by a stranger with a smile that held no soul. I fought to get her back, feeling his knife against my throat, believing it was the end. We survived that night, but the nightmare was far from over. 6 months later, a delivery arrived at our new home. Box with no card. Inside were a bouquet of black funeral flowers. And a single silver high heel. It was her shoe from the night she was taken. He wasn't just a random attacker. He was a hunter. And he had just found us again. This is not just a story of love. This is a story of survival. If this story has your heart pounding, if you need to know how we fight back against the darkness, then you cannot look away. Subscribe now to join us on this emotional and suspenseful journey. Your support means we can keep sharing tales that are not just watched but truly felt. Hit that subscribe button and become a part of our community. We promise it will be a journey you will never forget. The crimson glow of the neon ingot sign bled onto the wet asphalt. Mia's laughter echoed in the cool Los Angeles night, a sound I had fallen in love with. Her hand felt warm and sure in mine as we walked away from the jazz club. We stopped beneath a street lamp that hummed with a soft, electric buzz. The air smelled of rain and her jasmine perfume. She turned to me, her eyes reflecting the city's glittering skyline. "You are my future," she said, her voice steady and clear. A thrill sharp and sweet shot through my veins. This was it. The moment everything would begin. I leaned in to kiss her, my heart hammering against my ribs. But my lips met only the cold, damp air. I opened my eyes. She was not there. The space where she had stood was empty. Her laughter was gone, replaced by the distant wail of a siren. The warmth of her hand still lingered on my palm, a cruel phantom touch. I spun around, my breath catching in my throat. The street was deserted. The only movement was the flicker of the neon sign. Then I saw it. A single silver high-heeled shoe lay on its side near the curb. It was hers. A wave of cold dread washed over me. From the dark mouth of the alley next to the club, a low, guttural sound escaped. It was not an animal. It was a sound of pure human struggle. My feet were rooted to the spot, yet my body screamed at me to move. The humming street lamp above me began to flicker violently. Pop, pop, pop. With a final sputter, the light died, plunging the sidewalk into deep shadow. The alley was now the only source of light, a sickly yellow glow from a single bare bulb. And in that glow, I saw a figure stumble forward. It was Mia. Her dress was torn at the shoulder. Her eyes were wide with a terror I had never seen before. She reached a hand out toward me, her fingers trembling. Her mouth opened but no sound came out. Then a tall, broad-shouldered man stepped out of the darkness behind her. He moved with a slow, deliberate calm that was more frightening than any rush. He placed a heavy hand on her shoulder, his fingers digging into her skin. She flinched, a silent sob shaking her frame. He looked directly at me. His eyes were flat and empty like two dark stones. A slow smile spread across his face. It did not reach his eyes. "She was just leaving," he said. His voice was quiet, but it carried across the silence with the force of a physical blow. Mia's terrified gaze remained locked on mine, pleading. The man's grip on her shoulder tightened, his knuckles turning white. He began to pull her back, step by step, into the consuming darkness of the alley. I stood frozen, my mind screaming, my limbs like lead. The last thing I saw was the silver buckle on his leather belt, glinting in the dim light as he dragged her away from me. My heart did not just pound. It tried to escape the cage of my ribs, a frantic, wounded bird beating itself to death against my bones. The air, once filled with the scent of jasmine and promise, now tasted of metal and decay. Every instinct screamed at me to move, to roar, to charge into that darkness and tear him apart. But my feet were anchors sunk in concrete. I was a statue of pure, undiluted fear. Mia. Her name was not a shout, but a strangled whisper, torn from a place deep inside me I did not know existed. Her wide, terrified eyes were the only thing I could see, two pools of liquid despair begging me to wake up from this nightmare. The man's flat, empty gaze remained on me, a predator asserting its dominance. His smile was a gash of triumph in the gloom. He took another step back, and Mia was forced to move with him, a grotesque dance partner. Her silver shoe, abandoned on the pavement, seemed to mock me. A symbol of a perfect evening now shattered into a million sharp pieces. The distance between us grew, an ever-widening chasm of shadows. The hum of the dead street lamp was a funeral dirge. I felt a tremor start in my hands, a violent shaking that traveled up my arms and seized my entire body. This could not be happening. This was not our story. Our story was sunsets and jazz and a future written in starlight. Not this. Not a dark alley and a silent scream. I forced a breath into my frozen lungs. It was like breathing shards of glass. Had to move. I had to be the man she believed I was. With a guttural cry that ripped my throat raw, I broke the paralysis. I launched myself forward, my legs clumsy and heavy. The world narrowed to that yellow rectangle of light at the mouth of the alley. I could see the grimy brick walls, stained with graffiti and something darker. I could see discarded trash cans, overflowing and reeking. And I could see him, his broad back now to me, one hand still clamped on Mia, dragging her deeper. Let her go. My voice was stronger now, fueled by a torrent of adrenaline and rage. He did not even turn around. He simply raised his other hand, a casual, dismissive gesture. And from the deeper shadows, two more figures emerged. They were just as large, just as menacing, moving to block the alley's entrance. They stood shoulder to shoulder, a wall of muscle and malice. My charge faltered. My breath hitched. Hope, that fragile flame, sputtered and nearly died. One of the men took a step toward me, cracking his knuckles. The sound was like gunshots in the confined space. The other smiled, a hollow, joyless expression. I was outnumbered. I was overpowered. Despair washed over me, cold and final. I looked past them into the alley. I saw Mia twist in the man's grip, her face a mask of pure struggle. Our eyes met for one last searing second. In them I did not see just fear anymore. I saw a love so profound it hurt to look at. I saw a goodbye. Then the first man shoved her hard, and she disappeared into the blackness at the back of the alley. The two men in front of me started to advance, their intentions clear. I was not getting past them. My love was gone. And the city around me, the beautiful glittering La La Land, did not care. It just hummed its indifferent tune, its neon lights bleeding like forgotten wounds into the uncaring night. The world did not just shrink. It collapsed into a single, suffocating point, the space where she had vanished. The two men advanced, their movements synchronized and fluid, a practiced nightmare. Every streetlight, every distant car horn, every star in the smoggy sky seemed to mock my powerlessness. My love for Mia was a physical pain, a white-hot brand searing my soul. It was not a choice. It was a compulsion. A raw, animal sound tore from my lips as I charged the human wall before me. I did not aim. I did not think. I became a weapon of pure desperation. I lowered my shoulder and slammed into the first man. The impact jarred my teeth, sending a shockwave of pain through my entire body. It was like hitting a brick wall. He grunted, stumbling back a single step, but his partner was already moving. A fist, hard as a piston, connected with my ribs. A sickening crack echoed in my ears, followed by a bloom of fire in my side. The air left my lungs in a whoosh. I swung wildly, my own fist connecting with a jaw that felt like granite. Pain exploded in my hand, but I felt a grim satisfaction as his head snapped back. For a moment, a gap opened between them. It was all I needed. I ducked under a grasping arm and plunged into the alley. The stench was overwhelming. Rotting garbage, urine, and the coppery tang of fear. The single bare bulb cast long, dancing shadows that twisted into monstrous shapes. "Mia!" I screamed, my voice hoarse and broken. The alley was a dead end. A high chain-link fence, topped with razor wire, gleamed at the far end. And there she was, pinned against that fence by the first man. He had one hand over her mouth, the other tearing at the fabric of her dress. Her eyes were wide, unblinking saucers of terror, reflecting the dim, sickly light. She was fighting, her hands pushing uselessly against his massive chest, her legs kicking at the air. Seeing her like that, so vulnerable, so violated, unleashed something feral inside me. The pain in my ribs vanished, replaced by an icy, focused rage. The two men from the entrance were behind me now, their footsteps closing in. I was trapped, but so was he. My gaze locked with Mia's. In that fractured second, 1,000 unspoken words passed between us. I saw our first date, the way she laughed at my bad jokes. I saw the quiet mornings, her head on my chest, listening to my heartbeat. I saw the future we had painted together, a beautiful, impossible dream. And I saw it all being stolen away. "No," I whispered, the word of vow. I did not turn to face the men behind me. I launched myself forward, my entire being focused on the monster holding my world captive. He saw me coming. A flicker of annoyance crossed his features, as if I were a gnat he had to swat. He released Mia, shoving her hard against the fence, and turned to meet my charge. Time seemed to warp, slowing to a thick, syrupy crawl. I could see the individual pores on his face. I could see the cold calculation in his dead eyes. I could see Mia sliding down the fence, her body trembling. His fist drew back, a hammer meant to destroy me. But I was already inside his guard. I did not try to punch him. I threw my entire weight into him, wrapping my arms around his torso, driving him back. We crashed into a stack of overflowing metal trash cans. The clatter was deafening. We fell together in a tangle of limbs, landing on the wet, filthy concrete. The impact knocked the wind from him. I was on top, my vision clouded by a red haze of fury. I hit him. Again. And again. My knuckles split open against his teeth. Warm, metallic blood splattered my face. He roared, bucking beneath me, his strength immense. Then, a searing, unbelievable pain erupted in my back. Once. The two other men were on me, kicking me, pulling at my clothes, my hair. Fingers dug into the wound on my ribs, and I cried out, my body arching in agony. The man beneath me took advantage, throwing me off. I landed on my back, the air driven from my lungs. I looked up, gasping, into a circle of hatred. The first man got to his feet, wiping blood from his mouth. He was smiling again, that same empty, chilling smile. He nodded to his companions. They grabbed my arms, pinning me to the cold, wet ground. I struggled, but I was a butterfly pinned to a board. My strength was gone. My body was broken. The first man stood over me, his shadow swallowing me whole. He reached into his jacket. The steel glint of a knife blade caught the dim light. It was long. It was sharp. This was it. This was the end of our story. I turned my head, my cheek pressed against the cold, grimy concrete. My eyes found Mia. She was huddled against the fence, her knees drawn to her chest, her face pale and streaked with tears. Eyes met. And in that final heart-tearing moment, I poured every ounce of my love, my regret, my soul into my gaze. I wanted it to be the last thing she ever saw. The man with the knife knelt down. His weight settled on my chest. I could not breathe. The cold tip of the blade pressed against the hollow of my throat. A single perfect tear escaped Mia's eye and traced a path through the grime on her cheek. It was the most beautiful, the most devastating thing I had ever seen. I closed my eyes, waiting for the final, cruel cut. But it did not come. Instead, a new sound pierced the tense silence. It was a high, frantic, electronic wail. The sound of a police siren. It was close. Very close. And it was getting closer. The pressure on my chest vanished. The man with the knife froze, his head cocked, listening. The siren grew louder, a screaming promise of salvation. The two men holding my arms released their grip, their heads snapping toward the alley entrance. A look of raw, panicked communication passed between the three of them. This was not part of their plan. The first man stood, sheathing his knife with a swift, frustrated motion. He shot me one last, venomous look, a promise of unfinished business. Then he turned. All three of them moved as one, melting back into the deeper shadows of the alley, disappearing behind a dumpster, into a door I had not seen, becoming ghosts once more. Just like that, they were gone. The alley was silent, save for the approaching siren and my own ragged, painful breaths. I lay on the ground, trembling, unable to move. The world swam in and out of focus. Then a soft touch on my face. Her touch. Mia was there, kneeling beside me, her hands fluttering over my wounds, her tears falling on my skin. She was crying, whispering my name over and over. I tried to speak, to tell her I was okay, but only a choked sob came out. The red and blue lights painted the brick walls in frantic, swirling strokes. The siren stopped, replaced by the crunch of footsteps and the static crackle of a police radio. We were safe. But as I looked into Mia's beautiful, traumatized eyes, I knew nothing would ever be the same. The monster's smile was burned into my mind. The cold feel of the knife was a brand on my throat. He was still out there. And he had looked at me. He knew my face. Our love had survived the night, but it was now a love forged in fear, a future forever shadowed by the darkness of a Los Angeles alley. The swirling red and blue lights did not feel like salvation. They felt like a brutal exposure, illuminating the wreckage of our lives. Mia's tears fell on my face, mingling with the blood and grime. Each drop was a searing accusation of my failure. I tried to lift a hand to comfort her, but a white-hot agony in my back and ribs seized me, forcing a gasp from my lips. "Do not move," she whispered, her voice fractured. "Please do not move." Her hands, so gentle, pressed against the worst of the bleeding on my back. Her touch was the only anchor in a world spinning into chaos. Heavy footsteps approached. Two police officers, their faces grim and professional under the harsh beam of their flashlights, filled the entrance to the alley. The light swept over the overturned trash cans, the splatter of my blood on the concrete, and finally settled on us. "We have an ambulance on the way," the first officer said, his voice calm but firm. "Can you tell me what happened here?" I tried to speak, to form the words, but my mind was a scrambled mess of fear and pain. All I could see was the deadness in that man's eyes. All I could feel was the cold press of his knife. Mia answered for me, her voice trembling but clear. "There were 3 men. They dragged me in here. He tried to stop them." Her breath hitched. "They had a knife." The second officer was already on his radio, calling for backup. His words a low, urgent stream. "Suspects are 3 males, armed, last seen on foot heading west from the alley behind the Ingot Club. Consider them dangerous." The first officer knelt beside me, his eyes assessing my injuries. "You are a brave man," he said, but the words felt hollow. Brave men did not lie broken on the ground while the woman they loved was almost taken from them. The distant wail of the ambulance grew louder, a new layer of sound in the nightmare. Paramedics arrived, their movements efficient and swift. They gently moved Mia aside and began to work on me, cutting away my jacket, applying pressure to wounds, shining a light in my eyes. The world became a series of disjointed sensations. The cold sting of antiseptic, the tight pull of a blood pressure cuff, the crisp, clean smell of their uniforms amidst the alley's filth. Through it all, I kept my eyes locked on Mia. She stood wrapped in a metallic emergency blanket, her arms wrapped tightly around herself, looking small and lost. A female officer was speaking to her softly, but Mia's gaze never left mine. It was a tether, the only thing keeping me from drowning. They loaded me onto a gurney. As they wheeled me out of the alley, I saw it again, the single silver high-heeled shoe lying by the curb. A monument to the life we had just been living, a life that now felt 1,000 years away. The ride to the hospital was a blur of streetlights streaking past the windows and the paramedic's calm voice noting my vitals. Mia followed in a police car, our connection severed by necessity. At the hospital, it was a whirlwind of bright lights and beeping machines. X-rays. Stitches. A doctor with a tired face informed me I had 2 broken ribs and a deep laceration in my back that required surgery. The words washed over me. None of it mattered. All that mattered was the look on Mia's face when they finally brought her into my room. The frantic terror in her eyes had been replaced by a hollow, shell-shocked emptiness. She came to my bedside, her hand finding mine, her grip surprisingly strong. "They are gone," she whispered. "The police, they could not find them. It is like they vanished." A cold knot tightened in my stomach, worse than any physical pain. They were not gone. Men like that did not just vanish. They retreated. They waited. I squeezed her hand. "It is all right," I lied, my voice raspy. "We are safe now." She shook her head, a single, slow, devastating movement. "No," she said, her voice barely audible. "He looked at you. He saw you. He knows who you are." The unspoken truth hung between us, thick and suffocating. This was not over. The monster was not just a random attacker in the night. He was a man with a face, a man who had marked me. He was out there in the glittering, indifferent city, and he had our scent. The fear in the room was no longer a sharp, immediate panic. It had mutated. It had become a cold, patient thing, coiling in the corner of the sterile hospital room, waiting to slither home with us. Love had been tested in fire and blood, and we had survived. But the shadow he cast was long, and it was coming for us. I held Mia's hand tighter, knowing that the real terror was only just beginning. 6 months later, the memory lived not as a sharp pain, but as a constant, dull ache. A ghost that walked beside us. We had moved across the city, changed our numbers, and tried to rebuild. But some fractures never truly heal. They just learn how not to break completely under the weight. Tonight we were trying. A small, quiet dinner at home. Mia's hand still sometimes trembled when she lifted her glass, and my eyes still darted to every shadow in the corner. But we were trying. The doorbell rang. Simple, mundane sound. Yet it froze us both solid. We were not expecting anyone. The world outside our door had become a place of potential threats. Our eyes met across the table. The same unspoken fear passed between us. I stood up, my body still stiff from the old injuries. "I will get it," I said, my voice quieter than I intended. I walked to the door, every sense screaming. I could feel Mia standing behind me, a silent, watchful presence. I peered through the peephole. A young man in a delivery uniform stood there, holding a long white box. Flowers. My breath left me in a slow, shaky exhale. Just flowers. Peace offering from a friend, perhaps. I unlocked the door and opened it. "Delivery for Mia," the young man said with a polite smile. Took the box. It was light. "Who are they from?" "No card, sir," he said with a shrug before turning and walking away. I closed the door, the lock clicking back into place with a sound that usually brought comfort. Tonight it felt flimsy. "Flowers?" Mia asked, her voice hopeful yet cautious. "Yes," I said, carrying the box to the kitchen table. "No card." We opened it together. Inside, nestled in green tissue paper, was a bouquet of flowers. But they were not roses or lilies. They were black calla lilies. Exotic, beautiful, and funereal. A cold dread began to creep up my spine. Then I saw it. Tucked among the dark, waxy petals was not a card, but a small, familiar object. It was the other silver high-heeled shoe. The one she had been wearing that night. The world tilted. The air vanished from the room. Mia let out a small, choked sound, her hand flying to her mouth. Her eyes were wide with a terror I had prayed we would never see again. He had not vanished. He had been waiting, watching. He knew where we lived. This was not an ending. It was a message. Promise. I pulled Mia into my arms, holding her as her body began to shake with silent sobs. I looked over her shoulder, out our window at the glittering lights of Los Angeles. The city of dreams had become a city of nightmares. Our fight was not over. It was just beginning. And we would face it together, because our love was the only weapon we had left against the darkness. This story of love, fear, and survival was a journey. If you were moved, if you felt the suspense and the emotion, then you understand the power of a story. For more tales that grip your heart and refuse to let go, consider subscribing to the channel. Your support helps bring these narratives to life.